MPA and RIA. It's not the real ones. But what they do is it's malware, and it's affecting Windows malware, which the BBC don't seem to know the difference between PC malware and Windows malware. We do. So it's basically a piece of malware that when it gets infected on the Windows user's machine, what it does is it then checks for .torrent files, goes through our home directory and other settings and things like that, and if it finds them, it then creates a copyright violation, copyrighted content detected, and gives you a warning, and files detected, and it's basically one of these pay up or else scams. And it gives you a settlement. If just to settle, you pay $400 or whatever it is via PayPal or whatever. And it's malware that plays on this whole pay up or else thing. And it's just I'm surprised when I read about it. I thought it was real. I thought it was like Sony and whatever had outsourced this dirty business to a third-party company that had been doing it and got caught. It turns out it wasn't. That's how despicable these people have gotten, that you could genuinely assume that they would actually do that.
Well, I remember when this story first came out, and I think from memory it was sometime last year when this scam was exposed at the time, I think. Well, there's certainly a very similar one being played out. But it does highlight the other scam, which we recently saw ACS Law engaging in, or if you want to call it a scam, where the speculative invoicing model says that if you send enough letters or warnings out to people offering a quick settlement fee at a reduced cost, or a court case which may prove even more costly, you get people that will pay up, and it plays on a lot of people's guilt or feeling of guilt in relation to alleged copyright violations. We haven't heard anything else in regards to the ACS Law and their speculative invoicing scheme, which has all ended in tears with ACS Law closed for business and MediaCat closed for business too. But yes, it was a scam that the BBC wasn't willing to seem to equate to Windows users or Windows machines. But yes, it's a horrible piece of malware yet another horrible piece of malware for the Windows machine. And not being a Windows user at the home, I can only imagine how difficult it is now when you get a warning up on your home desktop as to how much faith you put into it. Is it a real one? Is it malware? Is it somebody who's got ulterior motives?
It's an age-old thing that you see all the time on Windows, where your machine has been infected. Just go and click on this and buy this piece of this antivirus application, and just put your credit card number in. You see it all the time, and this is just a slight twist on it. I have noticed that on the BBC, they always call it PC virus. There's no such thing as a PC virus. We all know that.
Sometimes they do name the operating system, but
I was going to say that.
Solaris, if it's Solaris or Linux or Android, they always see that because you have to know. But just don't mention Windows because it's very, That was my point. When they do several stories within a few days of each other, all mentioning PC viruses, and the M word, Microsoft, and the W word don't get a look in, despite it being exclusive to Windows. And then there's one story about Android, and saying, there's however many Android applications that were infected with malware, and what's Android this and Google Android that. They also say virus when it's not actually a virus. It doesn't spread. You have to install it. You have to be stupid enough to click on it and install that. So that's not a virus. And they use the word virus, and they say Android viruses, attack, be very afraid. So I wrote about it, and then Glenn Moody wrote about it because he found my post. And increasingly, I think people will put some pressure on them to actually at least say the W word. Actually, one of the readers of my site, he wrote to the person who wrote some of these articles, and the person silently corrected the article. He added the W word to the article, and guess what happened to the comment which suggested that? It was deleted.
So then he tries to make it, hey, you deleted my comment and corrected your article. But then, of course, you can control what's deleted. So, of course, it never will show up. It's just, you can talk
and that
the outside.
it's one thing. I mean, you kind of expect that from some news outlets. The problem is, this is me going on a bit of a rant. The BBC demand money for the TV license on the basis that it's quality journalism. It's not quality journalism. It's high school journalism at best. These people are basically clueless. They're totally clueless on a lot of things. I personally just happen to notice how bad they are at covering technology. So I've got to assume that if I notice it in the technology thing, then other people who are specialists in other areas, that they'll notice it in areas where they have knowledge in as well. So
one very notable exception is Bill Thompson. Lots of people think of him as the
yeah.
stands out, but he's got more of a he doesn't actually cover news. He's more of a columnist, so he doesn't get treated as news so much.
Well, to be fair, I mean, BBC Click for me, I do watch it whenever I get the chance to, just to see what they're promoting next. But I mean, BBC Click is a prime example of what happens when you give them the responsibility of open reporting and honest reporting. I think maybe honest is a bad word, but with BBC Click, it is a Windows-focused show in my view, and I've been very
please.
Yeah. Sorry, my mistake. Yeah. It's. I mean, you read, you hear some of the articles. I can't think of any of the reporters' names. I'm just off the top of my head now. Keflin Jones is one of them, I think.
Rory Keflin Jones. Yeah.
Yeah, and it is just mostly, in my view, Microsoft promotion from beginning to end. I've found more factual things from the Wind Trolls in Cola rather than on the BBC Click site. Show. But that being said, I have to defend the BBC in one respect, and that would be Doctor Who, which is worth the license fee alone. So just for the record, I'll state that. But in regards to the rest of their shows, I think yes, it's a complete waste of money.
Did you hear about the iPlayer going international? If you paid them some money, and I thought it was strange because even the BBC content you can get pretty much for free on YouTube, many of the things, and probably they won't mind either. And they want to charge, I think, £15 or so for any person in the world, basically, to get access to the wonderful reporting of the BBC. I mean, things like, I'm not sure about news, even BBC Click, or that they once in a while produce these documentaries. And recently they did one about the internet, where everything was very Microsoft flavored, and everything which wasn't Microsoft was something to do with anarchy and hippies working in garages, and it was a terrible, terrible show, and even Rockwell wrote a sort of a rebuttal. It basically was trying to take things out of the spin zone, things like trying to talk about the internet browser and not showing anything about Netscape, but just showing you Internet Explorer. You suppose that this is the internet.
Isn't that the only browser though, Internet Explorer?
That was the history, yeah. That was the history, going through the 90s and trying to just kind of conveniently skipping the very basic thing. I'm not sure. I mean, if any person, and in this case, Tim Berners-Lee was involved, they should have looked at these things, and that's just wrong. That's just not a history of the internet. That's just one person's point of view on how the internet was formed. And they interview Gates, like he was the one denying the internet and actually badmouth in the internet until very late, until after the internet was basically causing a lot of trouble to Windows because of Java and Netscape and things like that. So I probably have about 30 to 50 posts just about inaccuracies in the BBC, because I think that's just worse than any other news site I've come across so far.
I mean, I think the bitter pill with the BBC is that we have to pay for it, and we're forced to pay for it by law. So I think that for me is probably the bitter pill in respect to BBC.
Yeah,
you have to pay for it.
You have to pay those former Microsoft employees. I'm not sure. Lots of people maybe haven't paid attention, but especially in 2007 to 2009, lots of executives from Microsoft UK became executives in the BBC. And I could give you a list of names. If you give me time, I'll give you the head of BBC World is from Microsoft, and all kinds of people in the editorial positions. And I'm talking about like vice presidents and things like that. They're from Microsoft.
You can understand where a lot of the bias comes from. If you think about it, you've got a lot of Microsoft people behind the scenes, And then you've got on a personal level, you've got a lot of the people in the sort of professional mainstream content producing thing. They're all Mac users. A lot of them are Mac users. So I mean, I don't know if when Rory's writing up his articles, there's every chance he's sitting on a Mac. When he goes out on an interview on the road, he's typing it up on a MacBook Pro. You know, he's phoning in his MacBook and his iPhone. You know, it's the whole